Hello again. It's our weekly time to get together and Wednesday with Walton and Reis. I'm Brian Walton, and this is my partner, Kyle Reis. Welcome, Kyle.
Hello, Brian. How are you tonight?
Doing great, thank you. And you should know already that this video is available each week via thecardinalnation.com and an audio form at the Scoops Sports Network and all your favorite podcast apps. As Kyle mentioned, it's tonight. We recorded the night before, but it's Wednesday morning when you see this, and hopefully you get up early because my goal is to have this posted certainly no later than 8 o'clock and sometimes even a little earlier on Wednesday morning so you can catch it during your day as you're hard at work or whatever else you do.
Yeah.
So this is our last um, Wednesday with Walton and Reis before the draft, which will occur this coming weekend into Monday. We're going to cover that last probably and talk. I want to get Kyle on the record, put him on the spot, and let him know, that I'm going to ask him who he thinks the Cardinals are going to pick fifth overall. But before that, we've got some news, promotions, some awards, and we'll start with probably the biggest news, and it's something that we've talked about in previous um, podcasts multiple times, and that is when will JJ Wetherholt move up to AAA? And I thought the answer would be after the end of the first half, maybe, and I think Kyle mentioned maybe after the Futures game. Both of those weren't exactly right. The Cardinals decided to do it now, and he'll get a week under his belt before he does play in the Futures game. And I think that's a good thing, right?
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I'm really excited for it. As Brian said, we record on Tuesday before it goes live. We want you to be able to listen to it on Wednesday all day whenever you get a chance. And part of that is I was really surprised that JJ Wetherholt wasn't in the preliminary lineup for Memphis today. So Memphis is also currently in rain delay on Tuesday night. So maybe that factored into it, but I am really excited. Look, the kids earned it. The timing is so interesting to me because he'd kind of been slumping a little bit, hitting into some bad luck, but he'd kind of been slumping a little bit before his loud two home run performance on Sunday night. So and again, this slump was over a short period, like between 7 and 10 games or something like that. It might have only lasted about a week. Um,
Yeah, because
so
I think it's important to note that, and as you go to the Cardinals Nation, and we'll talk more about this a little bit, but the detailed stats for the players of the month across the system. In the month of June, Weatherholt's OPS was second in the system, 1.021. So, I mean, he had a tremendous month of June. Yeah, fine. His first week in July, he cooled off a little bit, but every player goes through peaks and valleys. Weatherholt hit 351 last month. Now, granted, he had a 421 BABIP, so that's not really sustainable, but I mean, he finished very strongly his time at Springfield.
yeah, give him a little taste of AAA before he gets into the All Star break week. Where they get a little bit of downtime, let him get to know his teammates, and then hit the ground running. What is effectively next week, Brian? My question for you is, and it's something we've pretty well talked about throughout the entire year, is where are we going to see this young man play in AAA?
Well, I think he'll get priority at shortstop and priority at second base. I don't really see anybody on the roster right now who's going to block him. The guy who I would think maybe, just most disappointed about the arrival of Weatherholt is Cesar Prieto. Now, he's played some third base as well, but I mean, you look at the infield there more, there's not anybody there who's going to block him. Now, when Sajasi comes back, I imagine if Sajasi comes back, I assume he will, you know, and Fermin, of course, they're both with St. Louis right now. There'll be some juggling around, but the Cardinals have had Weatherholt play a significant number of games at second base as well this year, and I think you know he's going to be in a situation where he's probably already past Prieto, and he's going to give, I think, Sajasi a run for his money in terms of potentially competing for a backup infield job next season. Now, this assumes that Weatherholt has a good final 2.5 months at AAA, but I mean, he does have 2.5 months ahead. That's assuming he doesn't play in the fall league, which I think is a decent shot. He might do that as well.
I'll be really anxious to see if he goes to the fall league. I'm also really anxious to see if Mr. Weatherholt gets a chance out in the outfield. I know you want him to focus on the positions where he's probably going to play in the majors, but I really just want to see him get a little bit of time out in the outfield. The local radio was talking about it a little bit today, but Brendan Donovan has become such a good defensive second baseman. He's become such a good defensive player, and also this is where his bat has really started to shine. You're starting to get the most of it, although he's tapered off since that toe injury uh, throughout earlier in the month, or I guess in June rather. So I'm anxious to see how they decide to rep JJ Wetherholt, and maybe that'll give us some indication of what they anticipate of him moving into the 2026 season.
And, ideally, an athlete of Weatherholt's capability, you'd like to see him try a little center field. Now, the Memphis Redbirds already have two center fielders in Nathan Church and Michael Ciani. So, and again, I think Wetherholt, if they wanted Wetherholt to play in center field, those guys would end up having to play in the corners or do something else. But again, there's nothing from the Cardinals organization yet about expanding Wetherholt's defensive versatility
Yeah,
beyond
and
second.
yeah, and apologies again to Michael Ciani and Nathan Church's families for completely forgetting that they existed.
Now, come on, Nathan Church, go look at the stats. Nathan
Yeah,
Church was the Cardinal Nation's Player of the Month for June, and I'm still very proud of that fact, even though the organization made a good choice as well in Deniel Ortiz of Palm Beach, who was the Florida State League Player of the Month. So they both did well, but Church out OPS'd him by about 50 points. The two had the same number of extra base hits, but Church had a much better strikeout rate. Ortiz struck out 21%. Church was under 11%. So, they both had a great month. Church batted 358, and that was his first month at AAA. Ortiz in Palm Beach batted 333 with a 1,005 OPS. So certainly not a bad month for either one of those players. Church, Wetherholt, and Ortiz were the top three players in the system in terms of OPS in the month of June.
Brian, do you think somebody at the Cardinals is listening to us and just trying to do the opposite of what we say? I
No,
was
I think they pick the player of the month who they want to hype the most. And
yeah,
Wetherholt has gotten plenty of hype. He's going to the futures game. He's just got promoted to AAA. We don't need to hype JJ Wetherholt more. Who else do we want to hype? Ortiz is kind of the new guy on the scene. 20 years old, playing great at Palm Beach. Let's get his name out there and get people talking about him.
yeah. It was funny, because you and I have kind of been of the opinion that it seems like they I guess skew towards the older players, the players at the higher levels. And it was something we kind of talked about a little bit last week, and then here they are. All right, we're gonna pick the guy down in the low A. No, I mean it very tongue in cheek as a joke, but yeah, I think you're right. I think Daniel Ortiz is very important to the organization because of the raw power. The defensive skill for Nathan Church aside, defensive skill for JJ Wetherholt aside, Daniel Ortiz just has a lot of raw power, and also somebody asked both of us on Twitter about, are we concerned about the strikeout rate with Daniel Ortiz? And of course we are. He has a robust strikeout rate on the year, but it's important and something we get to accentuate that in June, while 20% is still pretty high, close to 21% is still a pretty high strikeout rate. He actually brought his strikeout rate down about 11% from the prior month and the first 2 months of the season, where it was like 33%.
And
So
and
that's
his
good.
walk rate was over 14%, which isn't world leading, but it's certainly not bad either. So it's not as if he's swinging at everything that comes across the plate.
Yeah, there's a lot of development going on there, and that's a huge positive. And I love that it gives them a chance to highlight a prospect who's had such positive developmental strides in the first 3 months of the season.
And not bad for a 16th round pick, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That, relatively unknown. Like, people knew that his bat could be loud, but everybody was concerned about what position he was going to be able to play in, which is part of why he went. Some people thought that he would eventually go to like a D1 school. So that's another reason why he dropped to 16. There were some slot demand questions there too. So yeah, all of that is just a round way of saying that you're nailing it, Brian. What more could you ask for out of a 16th round pick? We'll see how much more you can ask for in the coming months.
Yeah, yeah. So Daniel Ortiz is the Cardinals player of the month. And as I said, we picked Nathan Church. Go to the Cardinal Nation. You can read and see the detailed stats for the top 10 finalists. I was thwarted last week. We talked a little bit. I hadn't announced the pitcher of the month yet for the organization, for the Cardinal Nation's view of the organization. And I was sort of hinting at this, that I was going to perhaps go with the reliever. Now, we set our innings pitched limit at 10, and the Cardinals organization picks 15. And by picking 15, you really exclude a lot of the relief pool, and it's not really fair unless you're picking the starter of the month. And most of the time, the vast, vast majority of the time, the Cardinals pick a starter as their pitcher of the month. This month, or last month, I guess it is, the winner is Hancel Rincon, who earned a promotion early in the month from Peoria to Springfield. And on one hand, his ERA was 3.42, and that's good, but not great. But his first month at Springfield. But to put 3.42 into context, among pitchers who threw 10 innings or more, that ranked 25th in the system last month. So there was a lot of good pitching performances, people who had a better ERA than Hancel Rincon. But Rincon caught the Cardinals' attention in one reason, and that is that he led in strikeouts, and that's partially because of the innings pitched, but also strikeouts per nine. And again, excluding relievers, that put him at the top. But if you included relievers and went down to 10 innings, Luis Gastelum of Springfield struck out 16.78 per nine. Tanner Jacobson down at Peoria, a little over 13. Mason Burns, 12.6, right about the same level as Rincon. But Hancel Rincon is a guy that the Cardinals, obviously moved up, and he's now starting to, make his way at Double-A. What do you think of Rincon, first of all, as a minor leaguer, but then second of all, in terms of his major league potential?
He's really interesting. So what Hancel Rincon does pretty well, three things that come to the top of my mind. He's kind of reinvented his changeup. And I think that that's step one with why he's having some success early on in Double-A. We've seen a lot of minor league hitters really struggle with good changeups, including Cardinals prospects throughout the years. And Hancel Rincon has a really good changeup that he's really refined. That's step one. Step two is his fastball and his changeup play incredibly well off of each other. He has a sneaky 93-ish mile an hour fastball. And those two things lead to the third thing that he does really well, which is for early 20s international signing, he actually commands the zone pretty well. He knows how to pitch with his changeup and his fastball off of each other on the perimeters of the plate, work inside, outside, up and down. So I think those are three of the things that have really stuck out to me in his starts. That first start, I watched that one really closely. I think between us actually recording a podcast, and it was really impressive to see him kind of work through it. He's also working on a breaking pitch that he's been able to use later in starts because of how his fastball and changeup are working off of each other, having a little bit more success. So that's what I'm seeing out of Hancel Rincon. I'm anxious to see if that keeps going. One of my favorite prospects over the years has been Angel Rondon, and he kind of did things a little similar where, fastball, I think his was the fastball curveball off of each other, and he commanded it really well. And then when he got to the levels that mattered, he just didn't have enough juice to get it done. But what we've seen on Rincon is a fastball that's actually trending in the right direction from a shape and a velocity standpoint, and the changeup that's playing off of it really well.
So my choice, the Cardinal Nation's choice as the pitcher of the month, is a guy that most folks haven't even heard of, and that is Ricardo Velez, reliever from Springfield. Did not allow an earned run in 10 and 2/3 innings. Had allowed just 5 hits and 2 walks. So 7 base runners in 10 and 2/3 innings, a whip 0.66, batting average against 143. Strikeouts per 9, only 8.4, but walks 1.7. So a strikeout to walk ratio of 5-1. Pretty impressive to me, Ricardo Velez's performance. Now, is Ricardo Velez a top prospect for the St. Louis Cardinals? Certainly not. I mean, he's a guy that's 26 years old and was let go by the Twins. The Cardinals picked him up. But again, I'm after who I believe had the best month, no matter who he is in terms of prospect. And Velez for the season at Double-A has an ERA like 1.5 or so. So he was a guy I picked. But you can go look at the finalists and see what you think about the results. But again, probably the key difference is that I picked 10 innings as a line, the Cardinals picked 15.
Yeah, I love the way you do it. I know we talk about it a bunch, but I just think it gives a chance to highlight more prospects, and that's what I'm about, Brian.
Yep. And that's the cool thing about it. I mean, you can see that some guys are taking a step forward. Austin Love, Gordon Graceffo, Mason Burns, guys that, aren't going to necessarily bust the headlines, but guys that could, become contributors for the major league team in the future.
Yeah. And it also gives us a chance to double back to prospects who are on the top 20 list, like Gastelum, right? And where people might just look at his ERA and say, oh, it's still kind of inflated, but it gives you a chance on your terrific website to break it down a little bit more and say, oh, you know what? He had a rough couple bad luck outings that inflated his ERA, and here he is over the last month, putting it back together, having good results, and you can see it broke down month to month.
Last month in June, to be specific, Gastelum had a 23-2 strikeout to walk ratio in 12 1/3 innings.
Amazing.
Not too bad.
Amazing. Love to see it.
Yeah, yeah. So, a week from now, the Cardinals will have completed their 2025 draft. Of course, they draft fifth overall and have all those selections in the first 90. And Kyle, it's interesting. When Kareem was on, we talked a lot about college versus high school, who they might take, pitcher versus position player. As you've looked at this draft, where do you think the Cardinals are going to go?
Look, to give Kareem just his cred, the guy knows the draft, and he's 100% correct. Where this draft is made is between prep shortstops and collegiate pitchers. And what's going to happen at 5 is they're going to have their choice really of one of the two. We do have to probably, based on all the reports that we're reading from inside sources, and we have to operate underneath the assumption that there's two players who will almost certainly be off the board at 5. Left-handed pitcher Cade Anderson and prep infielder Ethan Holiday. I think if you were to ask people in the industry, and if you were to read the tea leaves of all the information that's being disseminated, those are the two players who will almost certainly not be there at 5. Now,
I wouldn't be surprised, by the way, I wouldn't be surprised if Anderson and Holiday went 1 and 2 to the Nationals and Angels. Wouldn't surprise me one bit.
Man, so Brian, that's other than, the Angels always doing something kind of offbeat and maybe selecting Liam Doyle, who they just keep being connected to, and left-handed pitcher out of Tennessee, Liam Doyle. I'm with you. See, to me, that makes the most sense. Now, of course, the Washington Nationals, who are picking first overall, just had a bunch of upheaval in their front office. And, what I know about how the draft room works is, even though, like, you could probably take John Mozeliak, the president of baseball operations, out of the Cardinals draft room, and the draft would probably go pretty similarly. It's Mr. Flores who kind of has the final say in how it all goes. It's all collaborative, of course. So it's not that big of a deal, unless part of the reason he got fired was because the ownership was like, we don't like the direction that you guys are thinking about going in the draft, and we're going to assert ourselves into it.
You talking about Rizzo being fired in Washington?
That's correct. Yeah, that is
I
correct.
think Rizzo got fired because the Nationals have stunk since they won the World Series, and eventually he had to go. I mean, the timing is interesting because of the draft, but I suspect that isn't the reason. But who knows? It's speculation.
Exactly, Brian. And I guess that's the point I'm trying to make, is that I think that some people point to that like, oh, maybe this has something to do with the draft. There's like a 95% chance, 99% chance that it does not. I guess there's a 1% chance where it becomes kind of a gamble. Maybe there's something there. But I just bring that up to your point where, look, Cade Anderson's probably going to go 1. Ethan Holiday's probably going to go 2.
Well, and the discussion, pardon me for interrupting, Kyle, but
yeah.
I just want to, before you move on, is the organization, the Nationals have the first pick. So they're going to know, they're going to talk to Anderson's representative, and they're going to say, how much is it going to take to sign Cade? They're going to talk to Holiday's rep. All right, how much is it going to take to get him to give up his commitment? They're going to know, they're going to have all the facts on the table well before the draft, and they will have decided, they probably have already decided who they're going to take. So draft day, there's no, I mean, when you're picking number 1, it's just a matter of walking up and announcing the name. It's all done.
Yeah, you ask any fan who has ever watched a draft what they hate the most about the draft, and it's when they put the clock up for the first overall pick. No, just walk up there and announce the first overall pick. You don't have 15 minutes. You've had 1 whole year. Just go ahead and do it.
Exactly. But sorry, I interrupted you. So you were going to say Anderson and Holiday?
Yeah, I just think to your point, like, I think the smart money is that both of those guys go 1-2. Liam Doyle might go 2 to the Angels, and then at that point, maybe Ethan Holiday lasts to 4. He's not going to get past the Rockies. The Rockies will not let Ethan Holiday get by him. Every industry source knows this for a fact. Baseball America, Prospects Live, Fangraphs, Kylie McDaniel on ESPN, people that you talk to that would actually know. Like, those are the 2 guys off the board. So then the question becomes, I guess, to deconstruct it a little further, will they go with the best college bat, one of the 2 best college bat, because they've been rumored to have ties to catcher Ike Irish from Auburn. And they don't really have ties, but Iva Arquette, who's considered the best collegiate hitter in the draft.
And he's a shortstop from Oregon State.
Yes, please, a shortstop from Oregon State. And then, of course, the other outlier here is prep righty Seth Hernandez, who's basically big fastball, big changeup, prep righty with probably the most high ups. Like if you're going to just go up upside, probably the biggest upside pitcher in the draft. Um,
Now I know that they're going to say they're going to draft the best athlete available. But if you're the St. Louis Cardinals, why in God's earth would you draft another catcher? If there's
yeah,
one position in the system that's loaded, it's catcher.
yeah. The answer is because he can rake and he's actually a right fielder. So
Okay, all right.
that's why. Truth be told, he'll probably get the Josh Cross treatment when he comes into the organization. You'll be down there next year, Brian, and he won't catch one inning on the backfields, and then all of a sudden he'll be catching games in Palm Beach.
Yeah, that was the weirdest. That was really weird. But anyway, all right. So you said when they sign Irish. So is Irish your pick?
No, my pick, my personal pick as I build up to my line of thinking. Look, I don't think unless they get a huge bonus savings with either Ike Irish or Arquette, uh, I think it comes down to probably one of the three shortstop prep players: Eli Willits, Billy Carlson, and JoJo Parker. And I do think that they probably will pick whoever they get on the discount that matches the value that they have for the player. For
So
me,
so so you're telling me they're not gonna take the polished college pitcher this time around?
I don't think so. I don't think so. Not at this pick, Brian. We'll see where it goes.
So
I do think
What if Liam Doyle's still there? What if Jamie Arnold's still there? Still
I
don't
will.
think so, huh?
I no. I do think Jamie Arnold's the one. I do think that if Jamie Arnold is there at 5, if things shake out that way, where he makes it past the Mariners, and you know, because the Mariners are really, and the way my mind works is Cade Anderson's going to go 1, Liam Doyle's going to go 2, Arnold's going to go 3, and
Oh,
Ethan Holiday's probably going to go 4.
okay.
So
Okay.
then it becomes this other group again: Arquette, Irish, Hernandez, who I don't like. It doesn't sound like they have any connection to. Doesn't mean they won't draft him. Uh, they have only really been connected to those 3 prep shortstops, aside from Irish and also Kyson Witherspoon.
So Eli Willits isn't up there with them, in your opinion?
No, so it'd be Willits, Parker, and
Oh,
Carlson would be the
okay.
3 prep
Got it. Got it.
shortstops that I think would be in play at 5 there. Now, my preference would be JoJo Parker. I am a very simple person, Brian, and I enjoy loud noises. Not fireworks because it upsets my dog, but the other loud noises I enjoy quite a bit. And JoJo Parker has the loudest tool that I care about, which is power and consistent power. Whereas with Billy Carlson, that is a defensive first profile, as amazing as defensive first it is. But he kind of brags about finding his power. He still has not found his power, and he's built like a stick. So I worry about his ability to get to power. And
Pete
you know,
Cosma. Excuse me.
well,
Excuse me.
so that's really that is the elephant in the room. I don't think he's going to be as bad as Pete Cosma is, and Pete Cosma even got into power at AAA. It was the craziest thing we had ever seen. But I just think, like, if I'm drafting 5th overall, I'm not drafting for position. I'm drafting for a bat. I want a loud bat that's going to be an impact bat. So if the bonuses are all the same, what I'm end up doing is I'm going to what I think could be the loudest bat. I think there's an argument to be made in the scouting community that Eli Willits has a louder potential, more consistent bat than JoJo Parker does. And my guess is the conversation that the Cardinals will have in their room on Sunday, if it does play out the way that I think it does, where Anderson goes 1, Doyle goes 2, Arnold goes 3, Holiday goes 4, is it'll be how much is Willits going to cost, how much is Carlson going to cost, and how much is Parker going to cost. But it'll also be, do we go with what we kind of view as Willits, who we do believe can play short long term, who might be a little rough around the edges because of how young he is, but we do think has probably the best contact tool of the 3 and the most blooming power? Do we go with Carlson, who is an immense athlete, who can play shortstop maybe better than any other shortstop in this draft, with a rocket arm, but who's flashed a little bit of power and has some questions about contact? And Willits also has a switch hitting question mark you have to ask about Willits, going back to him. as we get back to Carlson. And then you have Parker, who might not be able to stay at short, who you worry about a contact tool here and there because he makes so much contact that maybe he expands his zone a little bit, but who has real power. And I think that that's going to be the conversation that comes down to it, unless Jamie Arnold doesn't go at 3. And then I do think Jamie Arnold is their pick.
So a point that Kyle referred to, I just want to go into a little more detail. The amount that teams have to spend on the draft for the first 10 rounds is a set amount. They can exceed that by 5% without getting into penalties, to speak to serious penalties, draft picks, and that type of thing. So while those top 10 picks are slotted and the vast majority of the money is slotted for the first rounder, teams are not required to pay the slot amount. They can pay a little less here, so they have a little more money to pay there. So a question would be, when Kyle was talking about, to see what the signability is, if one of these guys, is willing to sign for $200 or $300 or $500,000 under slot, that's $500,000 that they could spend to get another player later on that they might want. So it's not that the first pick isn't important, and there probably won't be a lot of foolishness with the 5th pick because they want to get it right. But the point that Kyle's alluding to is teams sometimes take players that maybe you think, hey, that's not the 5th best player, but it's because they're thinking about banking that money to use later on somebody else.
Yeah, and this year in particular is going to be a good year to do that, to maybe be a little bit more conservative about your draft pool. Because there are so many questions about those prospects at the front, those prep shortstop, but also there are so many good prep shortstops and so many good prep pitchers that you might be able to snag one at pick 55, somebody that drops out of the top 20 that you otherwise would not. And you're going to need some savings to get that done. So I just, it's such a fascinating draft. I'm really intrigued to see if it plays out the way I think it is, or I'm assuming it is, or whatever I'm doing in my head that I can't find the word for. And I'm anxious to see how the Cardinals pivot and what they choose.
So the draft again is Sunday and Monday, right?
That's correct. Yes.
Yep, Sunday and Monday. So it's not 3 days as before, which means maybe they'll move a little, more smartly in the early rounds. But the marathon that used to be 50 rounds is now only 20, and so it's a much snappier, more exciting draft, in my opinion. And the Cardinals will, of course, end up signing, a high percentage, almost all the guys that they draft, and then they'll probably go out and pick up a few undrafted free agents to fill gaps.
Yeah, and there are a couple like really interesting senior signs too. Like this is a pretty decent senior class, so I'll be anxious to see if the Cardinals draft, in past round 5, a couple seniors to help save some cash too.
Yep, and the point Kyle's on is, of course, a junior. You draft a junior, and if you can't come to terms with that junior, and again, the Cardinals, a lot of these guys, they've talked to their representation ahead of time, and they know what it'll take to sign them. But a senior, you're trying to sign a junior. Or a draft eligible sophomore, and they've had the leverage to say, listen, if you don't pay what I want, I'm going back to school. I'll just, I'll go next year. A senior doesn't have that leverage. It's like, sign now. Your expiration date is just around the corner. If you don't sign now, you're probably not going to get a chance in affiliated ball. So the teams have a lot of leverage there. And as Kyle said, there are some players, worth caring about in that group.
Yeah. It's going to be such a fun draft with having 4 picks in the top 89. And all 4 of those picks coming on day 1. Draft starts at 5 Central Time, I believe, on Sunday. And because they draft 5th, you probably only have to wait maybe 40 minutes, 45 minutes, maybe an hour to see who the Cardinals select. So it's going to be fun.
And then there'll be a long time till 55.
Yeah, it's going to be a long time towards 55. Brian, my last question for you, and I know we're on the 30-minute time limit.
Sorry, we're out of time. No, that's a guideline. It's sort of like the speed limit on the highway, except unless you're in a construction zone, then you need to slow down. Anyway, go ahead.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for that last part. You're playing to my many weaknesses. I guess I've got 2 for you. Where do you stand with who you think the Cardinals are going to draft? And then your second part has nothing to do with that. It is, will Eric Fetty make his start this weekend?
All right. I knew we couldn't get out of here without talking Fetty and Michaelis. I just knew that was going to happen. Unfortunately, now this is going to be an hour edition. What I think is going to happen is I think the Cardinals are going to take Jamie Arnold because it's such a Cardinals pick. And granted, if Arnold isn't on the board, then all bets are off. It's just too obvious that he's going to be a Randy Flores pick. So that's my guess. And like you said, though, you think he'll be gone sooner, in which case, we'll be back into the prep shortstop discussion, I guess. I think the Cardinal. There are a lot of folks who say that the Cardinals play the contracts, and they do. They play the contracts, but a precedent has been established, and that is Steven Matz is in the pen. Steven Matz makes a lot of money. He makes too much money for the contribution he provides, but that's the way his contract is. But they bit the bullet and said, we're a better team with Matz relieving, not starting. That decision has to come pretty soon. Now, I will say McGreevy's last start was not good in AAA, but the guy is, he's proven it. He's proven it over and over and over again. It's time to make the move. And I think the Cardinals need a jolt of something. And there's not a lot of something out there other than Michael McGreevy, and nobody's hurt. So I think the answer is yes. At least I hope the answer is yes.
Yeah, me too, Brian. I have a lot of other, I guess, maybe frustration-driven thoughts, but I will piggyback on your very well thought out thought and keep the rest to myself.
Oh, go ahead. Give us a little bit, Kyle. If you go too far, I'll get the hook.
I will say here, I think that this was the year that was supposed to be about finding out about the young kids. I think you found out quite a bit about both Miles and Fetty. Miles has had some really good starts. Fetty has had some really good starts, but I just don't know how you can get to the All-Star break with one starting pitcher and Eric Fetty in particular. And I think if I were to do it, I'd just get rid of both of them. I'd drop both of them because that's where we're at. I'd bring up Curtis Taylor, and he and Steven Matz would piggyback to get through until Matz could start. Get to a starter's workload.
They could probably get a mid-level. They could probably get a mid-level prospect for Fetty. I don't know if they could get anything for Michaelis. That contract they might have to eat. I think more likely, as I hinted, they'll move him to the pen and keep him around.
Yeah. I'd have to figure something out. If I'm running the Cardinals and I'm trying to give these kids hope, that they can win, that they can keep going, you have to give them a jolt, and you have to start playing. Michael McGreevy has to be in the rotation. You can't screw around with it anymore.
Right. I mean, I think we're well over halfway through the season now, so it's time to move forward. And I know John Mozeliak wants to go out as a winner, and the Cardinals are wild card contenders, sort of, kind of. But we all know, we all suspect that even if they were to somehow back into the playoffs at the last minute, this roster, especially this rotation, is not one that's going to go deep into October. It's just not. I mean, Sonny Gray can't pitch every day, and how do they get to Helsley? There's just not. It's just not there.
Yeah, absolutely, Brian. And it's not like those two guys that I brought up, and Fetty in particular, are doing much to help their wild card chances.
Right. So we'll see what happens when we get together next week. As I said, Kareem Hawk will be joining us, and we'll have a chance to talk about the first few picks, at least, of the Cardinals. A lot of the attention, of course, will be on the first pick, but the Cardinals will likely make some intriguing later picks as well that our two analysts next week will go through, and I'll probably just stay out of the way and watch the fun happen.
I can't wait. I'm excited. I can't wait to get, because there'll be one prospect that neither of us like at all, and then there'll be one that we love, and we'll gush and we'll fight and we'll argue and we'll hug it out, and it'll be a blast.
All right, so that will conclude the July 9th edition of Wednesday with Walton and Reis, and we will talk to you next time around. Thanks again, Kyle.
Thank you.